Thomas Jefferson's words in the Declaration of Independence makes it sound so easy. Governments are founded on the consent of the governed. How in the world does a government influence, demand, coerce, elicit consent? Who are the governed? Are the governed simply white male property owners? Are the governed all white males? Are the governed men and women? Does the governed include slaves? Did the slaves consent to the governed? So there's this conflict between an ideal versus a real situation. Ideally, all means all. All men are created equal, endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. The right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The Founding Fathers simply weren't willing to live up to that ideal. There were some who wanted it. There were some who demanded it. But realizing that it would split the Union, they settled for the best possible solution that they can get. They were realists. On the other hand, Southern slave owners wanted slavery everywhere. That was their ideal, that their right to property trumped all other rights. That as wealthy white men, they had a right to do whatever they please, including owning another human being. The federal government began to limit those rights, began to take away their rights. So this is a conflict over limited power. How much power should a government have to protect rights? The right to life, liberty, and property. How much power should an individual have to exert their rights of life, liberty, and power? The framers of the Constitution wrote the document to create a more perfect union. How can they bring the consent of the governed together? How can they bring people together and build a better future? Should it be based on an ideal? Does each one person in society get to decide what they want because they have total freedom as an individual? What are the realities of forming a government and reaching a compromise? How do people actually get along? And so over the course of the 19th century, the United States grew. And as the United States grew, the powers of the federal government grew to preserve the Union. But all along, the underlying debate is the question of whose freedom. Does all mean all? Does freedom belong only to white male property owners? Does freedom belong to all males? Does freedom belong to males and females? Does freedom belong to all peoples? Black, white, European, African, Mexican, Native American? It's pretty clear in the early republic that the Constitution was meant to protect the freedom of white male property owners. It was not meant to protect the freedom of Native Americans. It was not meant to protect the freedom of African Americans. It was not meant to protect the freedom of women. That ideal that all encompasses all drives American history going forward. But at each step of the way, it was up to minority groups to demand inclusion into people. That people meant all people and not simply white male property owners. The Constitution then meant many things to many people. Each of them could read the words on the document, come up with their own ideal in their mind, but they had to deal with the realities of American life. And in the early republic, the federal power expanded to meet the challenges of frontier security, meet the challenges of nullification, meet the challenges of slavery. And in each case, the federal powers expanded to deal with the situation. The expansion of federal power may not have been ideal, but the people that were voting at the time saw it as the only realistic option to make sure that the Union stayed together and moved forward.